Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Growin Up Podcast. We're your hosts. My name is Amber.
And my name's Nevaeh.
And if this is your first time tuning in, we like to talk about everything and anything that has to do with growing up. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, stay tuned and join us for the conversation. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. What do they call it? Friday Eve? It's Friday Eve.
It is Friday Eve. Today feels like my Thursdays are like my work Fridays for me. It feels like because Fridays we dedicate to learning. So we don't have any meetings on Fridays. We just do like learning and get shit done kind of day.
Like weekly?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of nice.
That is
Thursdays,
really nice.
I'm always like, yeah.
That's
Anyways, so for those of you who are tuning in on YouTube, you may still see that I am using a makeshift microphone right now. Still unpacking, still busy. I haven't gotten things to where I would like them. So please don't mind my lotion bottle microphone.
Just shows how committed we are to the podcast to get you all these episodes.
Yeah.
So we hope we enjoy them.
Yeah. And just a little background, we're only like recording this 2 days after our other one that we just posted. So it's not like I had a whole week to unpack.
That's true. Good disclaimer because she's not procrastinating, I promise. She's not, but she's moving in still.
Yeah. Again, the commitment to the podcast.
Awesome. Well, again, if you have never tuned into us before, we like to do a little segment in the beginning of all of our episodes where we talk about something that we've learned over the previous week. I'm not sure who went. I think you went last time. Did you go last time?
I can
remember.
I don't remember either. It was just 2 days ago.
Right? I guess we should know. So, okay, I'll take the lead then because I was actually really excited about this one. And I learned this yesterday from a fellow friend. But did you know that beer pong was created at Dartmouth College? And that they originally did not used to play beer pong. It used to be called something else. I can't remember what she called it. But it originally used to be played with ping pong paddles, and it was put on a ping pong table. But then it got to the point where they realized that when other people were joining, that it was a lot easier to just throw the ball upper hand versus using a paddle. And I was like, wow. Yeah,
that's kind of cool.
That is really cool. And now I kind of want to try it with the ping pong paddle because I was watching videos from my friend who went to Dartmouth, and she was like, this is how we play beer pong. And because it started there, they kind of stay to the OG way, it looks like, versus the whole setup with tossing the ball and everything. So and they literally will play ping pong but with beer pong in it.
Ping pong with beer pong in it. I gotta see it. I can't. It's not mathing in my head right now.
It's just replace the longer table to a ping pong table. Still set it up how you would play beer pong, but you just play regular ping pong. But your goal is to get it into the cup.
Wow. Wow. So
that's what I learned this past week.
That's pretty cool. That's a cool one.
Yeah, and I dug a little bit more into it because she was chatting on about it, and I was like, wow. And it started in the 1950s and or something like that. Which what the fuck are they playing beer pong in the 1950s? Well, I'm sure there's probably no beer, but the rules are different though. The rules are very more
why would
complex.
there be no beer?
I mean, I don't know. I just felt like maybe people were consuming less beer. I don't know. Maybe that's just what I think about the old times.
That's funny.
Yeah, but that's what I learned.
Partying it up. That's a cool learning. I like that.
Thank you. I told you it was fire.
Yeah. Okay, so my learning session today. Actually, I got two really quick ones. The first one, I learned how to use my iPhone as my webcam. Just gonna throw that out there. So that's what I'm recording with today. But my one that I was bringing today was, so at my work, we're in bonus season right now, not to brag or anything, but just got a bonus. And I learned how to contribute my bonus to my HSA. This is very nerdy. So that I don't get hella taxed on my bonus. So
Oh.
yeah. So I actually, it's funny because it was not, again, it wasn't mathing in my head. So I made my own little spreadsheet on Excel and I calculated how much of a bonus I would get if I was taxed on the whole thing versus if I contributed some of that to my HSA. You know what I mean? Like, what was the difference? And
Yeah.
it was a pretty, like, almost like a pretty good chunk of it. So, yeah, I learned about taxing. First off, I had to Google, like, how
Yeah.
much do we get taxed, state tax, city tax, all those random things. And then it just made more sense to me, I guess.
Yeah. That's interesting that bonuses get taxed. Like, I don't know why I didn't think they did, but like why, like, you know, people usually get them during Christmas and they're like, oh, here's your bonus. And like, they kind of call it a gift, no?
Yeah, and I think they actually get taxed at a higher rate from what I learned.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's because it's considered additional income source or something like that. Um,
Mm,
so that's why I believe employers offer something like this so that you can have that option to not get taxed on some if you move it into like a retirement or something like that.
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's
But
good to know.
another thing too that I really learned with HSA is that there's limits. So every year, like for example, here now in 2025, you can only contribute up to 4,300 into your HSA.
Mm.
So if you ever accidentally contribute over that, you actually get fined a fee, which is ironic. But yeah, so you can only contribute up to 4,300 in the year of 2025, and yeah,
Can you can you break down the word what'd you say?
HSA.
SHA? Yeah, that thing.
Yeah.
Can you, for the listeners and for
Yeah.
myself as well?
Yeah. So an HSA is called a health savings account. And it's a form of, I guess you can say, investment. Like you can use it as a retirement account, but it's primarily used for your medical expenses. So any money that goes into your HSA, you can use it to pay for medical bills and medication. And you can even like, if you look on Amazon, for example, if there's like health gadgets that you're trying to buy, some of them say FSA, HSA approved. You can buy things like that with your HSA. So it's just like it's like a debit account, honestly. You get a
Hmm.
card so if I were to pay for my medication or if I were buying vitamins, I can just pay with that instead. And
Yeah.
that money is not taxed. So
Oh.
yeah, so it's like, but the nice thing is if you contribute so much to your HSA and say you're just paying for your medical bills with like a credit card, like say you're financially stable and you rather get the points and your money is just racking up in your HSA. Once you get to a certain point, I think it's like $1,500, or maybe it could depend on the type of account you have. You
Yeah.
can move that into a retirement account. So it's nice because then you start getting interest on it as it goes.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's nice because again, it's not taxed, but once you hit a certain age, you can take it out as well. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to use it for only health
Then
costs
does it
in the
get
future.
taxed if you take it out?
I'm not sure.
Probably.
Yeah, unless if it's not medical expenses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, I guess that
So
makes sense though, because either way, you'd write off
your
whatever.
health. Yep.
Yeah, whatever you're spending on your health.
Exactly.
That makes sense though.
Yeah.
That does make sense.
Yeah. So it's a nice form of they call it a triple tax advantage because you're not getting taxed on it. And then you buy health things, so you're buying that tax free as well. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can also invest it and get it out later tax free. Oh, so
Yeah.
maybe it's not taxed then because that's the triple part.
Oh. Wow. The
Yeah.
more you know. I'll have to look
Yeah.
into that a little bit more because I actually I didn't, well, I had an idea, but I didn't know that you could do that. I wonder what kind of job, if that's like specific to a type of job that you get. Probably like
It's not.
industry.
You can actually open your own HSA. It doesn't have to be employer created.
Oh.
So if you wanted to create your own HSA, you could, and then you could have your employer take it out of your paycheck and put it into that tax free again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I had to learn this stuff as I went into corporate.
I was going to say, yeah, because I think when you get when you're job hunting and you look at the benefits, I think it can get a little bit like overwhelming because you're like, well, I'm not getting paid this much, but they're like, oh, the benefits are really good. So I think really understanding how to utilize those benefits to your like the full potential is just like that. You know, you have to like learn how to navigate those things and how to actually make it beneficial versus it just being called a benefit.
No, seriously. And as your income increases, the more you put into these like retirement accounts and tax-free things, like that actually matters on how much taxes you have to owe. So I think it's good to learn that. And our mom is a tax preparer, and it's kind of like your side hustle. So now the dots are connecting for me and understanding all these tax things.
Yeah. I'm still getting hang of it. I feel like I did learn a lot, like by going to school and like the concept of and like getting scholarships and like that whole portion of it, but I don't think really anything besides that. So bear with me. Bear with me.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's my learning topic for today.
That's cool. Nice learning topic. Not as cool as beer pong though.
Yeah. No.
Just kidding. Maybe not.
Okay. So for today's episode, we thought we'd kind of stick onto the same work realm and talk about, I guess, just work, getting through work. I know that like even though some of us may really enjoy our job, there are moments, you know, where we hit a wall, I guess you can say, or, you know, some of us even experience burnout. Some of us have our days. So we thought that would be a good topic for us to kind of discuss today and something that was top of mind recently. So,
yeah. And I feel like, especially now that you're finished with school, I'm full-time worker, we're kind of in a position where our life kind of revolves around work. And obviously when you have a little bit more energy to put into work, it shows.
Yeah.
It shows. But yeah, so just if you haven't listened to us before, you will probably talk about what we do for work. So I'll go first. I just got promoted to a research clinical coordinator in the Department of Orthopedics. I cover peds and trauma research, clinical trials, retrospective research, really anything that has to do with orthopedics involving pediatric individuals or people that are breaking bones out there somewhere. This is really my first time dabbling in clinical trials. I've done research before my master's where I was doing more generalized population research. Very different worlds. Research is also a field that is still growing. I think for a minute there, with the history of research in a lot of different populations and knowing how to do research ethically, it kind of became like a big like taboo industry. Nobody wanted to do it because like people, like you weren't getting people participating in research. And really with research, you need people to participate. And because there was such like talk around it, it just started getting popular again. And so I think that's why these opportunities are coming up, especially for people that want to go into medical school, that these are highly encouraged because, you know, you're contributing to science and contributing to the literature that'll help people one day. So that's what I do for work.
Yeah. I just want to say, since you got into this field of work, when I go to the doctors, I now opt into research and let them use my data.
That's good. See?
Yeah.
And I think the thing that, like, even myself, like, I didn't know much about research when I was going into my undergrad. The first like research experience I had was in high school where we looked at soil, and that's like really, we looked at soil for the microorganisms. Let me just put some, not, we weren't just like looking at dirt, but we kind of were, but, that was like my first dabble. So that's kind of what I always thought that research was like, you know, like molecular level. But as I got like older, you start to realize I did like research, in a lab where I worked with zebrafish, again, still like kind of molecular biology. But we also worked with like school grade, what is it called? School grade students, like in elementary school. And we like would teach them about science. And like, while that wasn't the research itself, it was still like a part of research.
Yeah.
Then I got into my master's program where it's like, obviously you're doing research 24/7. So I'm still getting into it. This was my first time working in clinical research, which is a really good experience for myself. And I get to work like firsthand with doctors that do research on the side besides just working clinically. So a lot of good experience that comes from it. But also, again, like any kind of job, a lot of hardship and learning and a whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
10 yards.
Yeah. However many yards.
Having a freaking lot, honestly.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Again, since you've gotten into that position, I've paid a little bit more attention to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess for me, I'm on a little bit on the flip side. My role at my job is I'm a cloud engineer. Technically I have a different title, but overall that's kind of what I do. It's a little interesting in technology, but basically what that is I'm a engineer in IT, and I work for a utility company. So I work in a very regulated industry, and I help application developers, so like custom application developers. We provide a platform for them to build in, which is using AWS cloud. So again, that's a lot. I know that sounds like a lot, but basically our customers are other employees of my company, which is a little different. So we don't actually have, customers who are out in the world like a lot of businesses, but our customers are actually other people who are actually in our company. So yeah, a lot of my job is really just engineering. I code, I solve problems, I try to make processes easier through automation, and I do a lot of documentation, and currently getting into a lot of project management. So if there are company wide projects, initiatives, I help out with that and manage those to make sure that they get completed. Good example of one that was recently completed was we used AI to help improve our customer call centers operations. So rather than them looking through a bunch of old documents, we created a platform for other people to be able to create an application using AI, so that now these call center reps are able to just like chat GPT, go in there, ask a question, and then AI will do the work and pull up their information so that they can cut time. It reduced a lot of the time that it took them to actually do things and get answers to the customers, the facing customers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, that's kind of what I do. A lot of my work is very support like. So in IT, it's a lot of support tickets, calls. If something's not working on our platform, a lot of people will reach out to us. Or if they're troubleshooting something that they need help with, they reach out to us. If there's some random company who thinks that they can want to move to the cloud, they reach out to us. So that's kind of a lot of the work that I do. But I also have a lot of experience previously before this in retail and the food industry. So more of that customer service oriented type of work. But yeah, that's kind of my mojo.
Do you feel like going from because you don't interact with a lot of outside individuals? Do you miss that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, I think it's nice working for a utility company because like even I'm a customer of my own company, like
Yeah. So you're helping people without directly.
Yeah. So
knowing.
I think of it, yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of that forward facing thing doesn't really matter because I can see the impact that we're making on the community.
Yeah.
And also just working in retail, I had a lot of horrible experiences with people. So it's
Yeah.
nice to not have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But no, I feel like I still am able to talk to a lot of people. And like I said, like we help the people who are actually building custom applications, and that's insane
Yeah.
to like think that like my application on my phone was created by someone who used my platform.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just asking because before I had a full-time job in undergrad, I worked as a patient care assistant where I was working bedside. in a hospital on an orthopedic floor. If you can't get the trend here, I like orthopedic bones, all that stuff. But it was such like a big transition for me to go from like obviously working with a patient the whole entire shift every day, getting to know them like on a personal level, interacting with them, and then like going into a position now where I still work with patients, but I do outpatient, and all of my patients I interact with are, well, not always outpatient. I do inpatient as well, but I'm not consistently like spending time with them every day during their stay. But it is nice because I still do get to follow up with them because like, a lot of research visits require like you to be involved for like a year or so. And so I still get to see them as my time goes on. But some part of me always miss kind of seeing the like transition there, like them doing that. But I feel like in some way I still get that. But it isn't as like personal, I guess, or as deep as a connection. So sometimes it can be hard for me because a lot of the work that I do now, like, while it doesn't really help anybody in this moment, like once it gets developed into literature and it gets applied into different places, then it'll help. So it's always kind of hard for me to remember that, like, well, I might not be doing much now, that I'll do it in the future, like versus where I was like in person with watching them heal, like, helping them with their rehab or something like that. You can like see it from the time that they're there to the time that they leave. And I don't know, it's just such an interesting transition from like dealing with people, especially like in a work environment.
No, yeah, I feel that. I think of when I was doing my annual like goal setting, usually required by work, about a year ago. I had a really hard time understanding the impact that I was making on the company. And it was very hard for me to create goals because I came from a retail space where it's like, oh, like create this many memberships for this many customers. But having internal customers was like a whole different shift for me to think about because we're an energy company and I'm over here in the cloud, like it didn't really connect. But then I think of some of the products, like I said, like an application on your phone that helps you track your energy usage. Like I helped, even though it wasn't like directly building the app, I did something that helped them. Yeah,
that's true. And that's kind of where I've tried to shift my mind, because I too like am getting to the point where I am starting to write my goals, and I just started this position less than a year ago, so I'm still trying to figure out, okay, like what can I do to make things better, and how if that's not with the patient themselves, because like I'm not really like, I'm benefiting so many patients in the future, but unfortunately I'm not really benefiting the person that's involved in the research. So like then it became more of a like, okay, like the strategical thing, and like more looking at like how can we frame research a little bit better so we can do more research. Or like how can we make more things more efficient so we can, make it efficient for the rest of the research to come through. So like it kind of, it was definitely a shift having to try to figure out that portion of it. And even now, like I think that's kind of what contributes to a lot of the frustration that I get, is that like I'm not rewarded then and there. So like all of these hardships I'm facing, it's not like I'm gonna like it takes a little bit longer for me to be rewarded from it, where like versus like me taking care of a patient and then like them being and showing their gratitude towards like whatever that it is that I help them with. I'm not really getting that assurance, I guess, reassurance that I'm doing a good job. And I think that's where I struggle the most with my job, and I guess maybe just me as a professional and whatnot. So kind of trying to figure out how I can supplement that.
I think that
any tips?
Well, I mean, my biggest tip was first just kind of voicing that with my manager. And I was like, I don't really get it. Like I know that I'm doing things daily, but then when it says create a goal that is aligned with the company's goal, I'm like, I don't know. Like our company's goal is to provide clean energy, and I'm like, how am I doing that? But I would just ask for help if you have that support that you can ask someone, or you can use ChatGPT. Like talk to AI and let him know your frustration. I'm pretty sure he will give you, or they will give you
some reassurance.
Yeah, or just some ideas. That's what I do sometimes. If I'm like facing a difficult situation, I'll just go to AI and be like, "Hey," and I'm pretty sure someone on the internet has talked about this before. So
Yeah, yeah. Because
yeah,
that's true. Because a lot of the time too, like a big reason for me doing this position was because I do want to go to med school, and like that was the goal, was
yeah,
to like get experience. And so like it's not very hard for me to think that like, okay, how is it benefiting me?
hmm,
It's like more versus the other way. Like I don't want it to just benefit me. Like I want it to benefit other people too.
yeah, yeah. See, that's what I would take. I would be like, This is me talking to AI. I would be like, I am currently your role, and this is what I do. How can I create some goals aligned with what you just said? And then
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it'll help you.
Yeah. I'll have to try that. Talk to Chatty on my downtime when I'm
Yeah.
stressed out at work. Chatty, I'm
No,
stressed out
seriously.
again.
You could. So you mentioned something earlier that kind of sparked something in my mind. So as I kind of said, I went from retail food industry to working corporate, right? And my first real experience at like working in corporate was when I got my internship when I was an undergrad. And that was also at a utility company out in a different city. But when I first started going to work, I felt like I was out of place. Like from being just, you know, working at Nike, you could literally go to work in your joggers and then like a Nike shirt, but
Yeah.
from dressing like nicer business casual type of clothes to sitting in an office, like did you experience anything like that going into work, like you felt out of place?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because again, I went from wearing scrubs as a PCA. Well, okay, first job ever that I had. I'm just gonna put this out there. I worked at Ulta before COVID hit. So again, went from dressing up to wearing scrubs, then to working in exercise and sports science, where it's exercise and sports science. So,
Mhm.
joggers, tennis shoes, like that was okay. Obviously, we had like our days where we had to dress up in business casual. But now, like, it's so hard for me because I work in a very, I guess, grown population. Like, I work
Yeah.
with doctors. I work with people that are very well experienced in clinical trials. So like it's not a place that I don't think, like, I don't see myself represented in that community whatsoever. But
Yeah.
I know that I try to shift my mindset to like, okay, I do want to be these people. And that's the only thing
Mhm.
that really gets me through. But yeah, I did experience that. And I think I still do experience that a lot. And I feel like I will probably always feel that way until I get to the point where I am a doctor and
Yeah.
sitting at a table. But it's funny because I've voiced that a lot to like my manager and like to my coworkers, and their biggest feedback was like, okay, like while they might be doctors, you're the person doing the research, and like you probably know research 10 times better than a doctor does, because that's not like their forte. That's not what they're spending 100 they're eight
Yeah.
hours a day
Yeah.
doing. Like you're the
Like,
person sitting there behind the computer doing the research. So
yeah, like you guys are doing completely different things. So you can't really
exactly.
compare yourself to them because,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, that's, yeah. When I first started at this, like as a full time job, I just felt like I literally went through maybe like 6 months of just feeling like I didn't want to be there in a sense of like, I think I just got so used to the fast work style of like fast food and retail that going to an office was like a little bit of a strain on me.
Yeah.
And I used to talk to one of my mentors about this a lot. I tell her, like, I don't know if I want to be here. Like, this is like as much as I wanted to get into a big girl job, as I kept saying it when I was going to school, but there was a point where I like did hit a I don't know if I want to be here because for those of you who don't know me, I'm very like creative minded, entrepreneur type. So like being in this whole corporate setup was a little tough on me. But anyways, point of that, we had noted down imposter syndrome in our notes for today's episode, and I have heard it like, but I never really knew what it meant. So I did a little Googling, and it says that imposter syndrome is the inability to believe that one's successes is deserved or legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts. So
Yeah.
that kind of lines with what you said, like, or does it? Like, what do you think
Yeah.
of imposter syndrome?
I have experienced imposter syndrome since the day I stepped into my undergrad. Like, I feel like it's always been something. And, I think it's gotten to the point where I've realized that while I might be experiencing that shouldn't be my mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm trying to get to the point where like I'm trying to look at the alternative of it. But yeah, no, I have always been in a setting where I felt like I never deserved to be there. I wasn't capable of being there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think obviously being Native American and always being the only Native American in the room had a lot to do with that. And I think also just thinking like education wise that like I was just like not as smart as everybody else. But I feel like that's
Mm-hmm.
just like the what's kind of fed into us as a society, which is unfortunate. But like even now, like I'm still the only Native American probably in my entire building. I am probably always the only Native American in the clinic. And I also try to not use that as like my explanation for like why I feel this way. Also, I also
Mm-hmm.
like try to figure out, okay, like what else can be contributing, because I don't want my identity to be like who I like only be my race.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And unfortunately that's kind of like what imposter syndrome, I feel like, at least from what I've seen,
Mm-hmm.
be like the biggest core of it is like,
Yeah.
you don't see people that look like you. But yeah, I've definitely found myself in the position where imposter syndrome does linger. But with time, and that's probably just because of the field that I chose going into. And I think that stands a lot for a lot of fields. Like it might be different in, public health, or it might be different in
Yeah.
a very different field, but at least for
Mm-hmm.
medicine and, that whole portion
Yeah.
of it, it's very hard to not feel it.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that you kind of mention that because I never really, I don't want to say like I never felt that,
Mm-hmm.
but I think because of how I like dropped out and then decided to go back, I've always had this mentality that like I fucking deserve this shit. Like I worked hard for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So it never really hit me like that I didn't deserve to be here. But I
Mm-hmm.
will say, kind of like I said earlier, that I have felt out of place. And I think that it's kind of back to what you said. Like there's not a lot of Native Americans out in these types of jobs. And even just being a woman, like I am in
Yeah,
a field that is dominated by white males,
me
and
too.
like it is insane. So imposter syndrome, I would say I haven't felt. Maybe I did when I was like first going to college, but recently I've been more of a like bad bitch mentality. Like I deserve to be
Yeah.
here. But I will say that I do feel out of place as being, again, a minority and a woman. But kind of like you said, like I try not to let that be my identity, even though it is, which is
Yeah.
so weird. But I
Yeah.
try not to let it, be that excuse.
Yeah. Like and it's such like a hard thing to navigate too, especially like in a work setting, because I feel like I contribute a lot of the and maybe this is not the right mentality also, but as a young professional, just thinking about the fact of like, okay, like why isn't this going right, and like
Yeah.
why are things this way, and trying not to think about like there being a cofactor of like it is because you are who you are.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I feel like that makes it like you said, like I also work in a male dominated field in orthopedics, and my goal is to go into orthopedics
Hmm.
as a surgeon. And so something that I always think about, and like when I kind of vent to people about like, oh, work is going this way, like, you know, what would it be like if I had like a little bit more support by somebody who like looks like me, or, you know, like would that
Yeah.
be different? And they're like, always their reply is like, you know, just think about like when you get to the point and you're in that position where you are the doctor, like how much people you could support
Mhm.
in the way that you wish you had been
Yeah.
supported. And so I always look at that as well, being a young professional, like, okay, who do I like, how can I take what I'm experiencing now and then contribute that to the future for other people? So then, you know, you know what you like, you've been in that position, you don't want to feel that like that person to feel the same
Yeah.
way that you felt. So that's kind of what gets me through a lot of the hard times, where like it kind of lingers in my mind, like, oh, like, is it because I'm a woman, is it because
Mhm.
I'm Native American, or, you know, things like that, and try to figure out like, okay, well, like, just keep going. You're going to help
Yeah.
somebody one day. There's going to be a little Nevaeh in the future that needs your help. So,
Yeah. No, I think that's kind of an outlet I found as well. Is just thinking of how I can improve that situation for others. So I kind of talk with you a lot, but like trying to find natives in tech groups and support things like that. Or just finding those rare people out there who do or are in the same field as you, you know.
mm-hmm.
That's a big, finding that support group is very good. And some companies have that. For example,
Yeah.
our company, you know, we have BRGs or ERGs, whatever you want to call them, resource groups that are specific to groups like Native Americans or women in STEM, women in tech, women in whatever. So I think those are also some good like resources to join if you haven't joined those and they're available at your company. I would definitely um, think about that.
Yeah, yeah. And even if you're in school too, like I think it really stems for looking to
Yeah.
like for those groups while you're in school. Like again, it carries into your professional realm. When I was at Mayo Clinic, they had that as well, called the Dakota Merge, and I met a lot of great professionals and mentors through that, um, as well. But also another thing too that I think about a lot as I, you know, kind of get in those moments where I'm frustrated about work and whatnot, or like what I'm feeling, or, you know,
Yeah.
what's the tasks that I'm given. It's like always thinking about like, as somebody who wants to work back in our with like our community, our native community, thinking about like how I can take these learning experiences and like, you know, these troubleshooting moments, and then at least have those under my belt to like hopefully one day contribute that same learning to, you know, the community that I do want to help, and
Yeah.
you know, help develop those same workflows or whatnot that, you know, work good in this area that you can
Yeah.
implement into a different realm that might not necessarily be that specific one as well. So that's kind of something that always stays in the back of my head as well, and helps me get through the tough times at work.
Yeah. No, I get that. So have you ever had like a moment where you, I guess, in a sense, hit a wall, like whether that be burnout or did you fail at something that like put you down and anything like that?
Yeah, I think especially now, as I've gotten a little bit more into my position, I am obviously starting to take on a lot more work. And again, because clinical trials and like clinical research in general is very different compared to what I was in before, which is exercise sports science, where you're working with PhD, like, you know, what would you call them? Professors, and
Mm.
who are solely just doing research. And so when you go into the clinical trial realm, you are working with doctors who are not necessarily spending a lot of their time doing research. So you kind of ultimately end up being, when you're a coordinator, you are the coordinator. You know, you
Yeah.
are making sure that XYZ is done and whatnot. So with that, I took on a lot of the troubleshooting for a specific study that is a investigator like initiated, meaning that like our site was the one who came up with the idea. So we have to kind of do like any kind of project, figure out what works, what doesn't work, what do we need, how do we do that. So I just got over a big hump where I was like, oh, I hate this. Like, this is not like, I can't do this. Who do they think I am? And like,
Yeah.
there was points where I was like, I think that like, I can't do this. Like, I think they should give it to another person, because like, I
Mhm.
don't think I have the, not, I guess, like even the bandwidth, but just like the mentality to take it on, because it was a lot of like, well, if this doesn't work, then try something else. And like, I've never experienced that before, to like where I was consistently failing.
Mhm.
And then, like when I had my first failure, I was like, that's it. I'm done. I can't do this no more. But then I realized, like, okay, well, it's not like it's going to go away. Like, it's not like because I failed that like that was my last try. Like, I can't just like
Yeah.
abandon it. Like, I have to try again. And then if I
Yeah.
fail again, I have to try again. Like, it's something that needs to be
Yeah.
done. So that was my biggest, I guess, hurdle that I had to. And it was like at the point where I was just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. But
Yeah.
good news, we figured it out.
Yeah.
But obviously, when you figure out one thing, another door opens and you got another couple hurdles to go. So,
Yeah.
but
No,
that was
it's
my first
definitely
time, like, big failure.
yeah. I think those are the moments when the small wins are very powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Just taking those big, huge problem monsters and breaking them into little ones.
Yeah.
That's that mentality is a little hard to get, but I think it's good. And I think of it too because I don't know if you ever heard of the when people are paying off debt, there's two different types of ways. There's an avalanche and a snowball method. So avalanche means you tackle a big thing first, and then snowball is you obviously like do littler and then you work your way up big.
Yeah.
But avalanche is technically like the better one of the ways because you're paying off big chunks and saving an interest, not the point. And but the snowball method is for those who it's more of a psychological effect. So it's like those small wins matter to some people and are only the only way that some people can actually get to the biggest,
Yeah.
monster. So I think it's
Yeah.
really finding the way that you work and making your like workflow custom to you.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, because I also brought this up to my my manager as well. And I was like, I have nowhere, like, no idea where to start. Like, I have this thing I need to
Mhm.
do. And he was like, why don't you just make smaller to-dos of the big to
Yeah.
do? And then that's
Yeah.
kind of how I shifted my mentality. And I was like, okay, like, what's the first goal? Is it reaching out to somebody? Is it,
Mhm.
doing my own research, or is it having
Yeah.
this conversation or whatnot? So there was like, again, yeah, there was a lot of things that I had to do in order to get this big goal achieved. And like, that's the other thing I'm still trying to comprehend, is like, things don't work as fast as you want it to. And
Mhm.
I feel like, coming from a job where I was, as a PCA, you have these tasks to do, and like, these tasks are things that can be done then and there.
Yeah.
But like, now, obviously, in a different field, that, there might be a task, but it's not like it's something that, I mean, there are tasks
Yeah.
like that, but like, a lot of them are going to be things that take a longer duration of time and a
Yeah.
lot more work and effort, which means managing your time better, figuring out like, how much time am I going to dedicate to this and this a day. So
Mhm.
it's definitely a lot of, I guess, yeah, finding out how I work as an individual and what makes me efficient.
Yeah. I think that's a big shift, like going to a different kind of job than like those more customer service oriented ones is some of these projects take like 2 years and research can be what a whole lifetime.
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
sometimes you it's hard to know that you'll never really get that close to the complete. So I think
yeah.
those small wins actually do really matter in that moment.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
But
100%.
I felt like you though. That's kind of my I would say something I struggle with is as an engineer, you can get things done right away if you really want, right? But you have to be able to prioritize. So if we get support requests and they're like, ask me for something, sometimes I like just go right at it and it'll be done in like 5 minutes. But then I have to think about all the other things that I got going on. And I'm like, okay, let me chill out and, you know, prioritize all this shit that's going on because although it'd be nice to get their tasks done right away, you have to think about all the other things you got going on.
Yeah. Especially like if it's like me today, where I thought one simple task was going to be a simple task until it wasn't. And then it
Yep.
became multiple of other things that I was not able to finish in the time that I was there today. So,
Yeah.
first thing tomorrow, got to figure it out. But, and that's also another thing that I'm experiencing too, is like when a problem becomes a problem,
Mhm.
and like recognizing that. And like, it was funny because when I first started having these like meetings with my support staff and whatnot, they were like, okay, Nevaeh, you have any fires? And I was like, I don't think so. And then like I started getting fires and I was like, oh my gosh, I have a fire. You know what I mean? So like recognizing
Yeah.
those moments where you're like, okay, like all hands on deck, or like we need to
Mhm.
shift things around and figure out, okay, like ranking those priority and almost triage what it is that you have
Yeah.
to do. And so yeah, a lot of learning for me in the past couple months, but we keep
Yeah.
on working.
Right. Yeah. I think my biggest like hurdle that I had to get over since I've been at this job, my first real full-time job. I wouldn't say real. My first adult big time full-time job. What
Whatever you want to
um
call it.
yeah, I think the thing is with me, because I'm very like entrepreneur mindset, is that I really struggle with working on someone else's time. And a lot of like what I get into is slumps of like I just want to do my own thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And sometimes that I'm a very motivated person, and sometimes when I hit these slumps, like I have to remember it's more about like consistency and just making sure that I'm because I can be at my best, but I guess that little mentality of reminding myself that I can do good here and still have my other thing going. Sometimes I do struggle with that though, is I get into slumps of not wanting to work. I think that's probably my biggest issue with working where I work now. But I will say having this podcast going in my like free time has been a big alleviation of that. And I've been able to focus a lot more on work
Mm.
and do good there. Which I mean, I always do good again, but it's just that more of that self reflection, self like caring about myself to know that like these feelings are there. How can I fulfill, that need for whatever it is that I'm wanting, which
Yeah.
I guess would just be my own creation. I
Yeah.
guess entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? Does that make sense to you at
Yeah,
all?
that does make sense. Yeah. Emotional intelligence at its
Yeah.
finest. No, that
Yeah.
does make sense, because when literally when your life revolves around work, it can get to the
Hmm.
point where like all you really think about is work, and like, you put all your
Yeah.
energy into like what
Hmm.
it is then and there. Um but it is kind of nice to have those moments where you just take it at what it is. And
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and that is also something I'm still trying to learn too, because I think when I first started working, I was like, dang, I'm spending so much time on my computer. And then I would want to go like study for the MCAT or something, but I would not want to pick
Yeah.
up my
Yeah.
computer again,
Yep.
and like kind of thinking about that. And also like the idea of like taking on how much you want to take on, and then using all your energy to do that one
Hmm.
thing, and then like you're not going to want to do anything for the rest of that time. Like
Yeah.
it is very much about dispersing your energy across the board and trying to use it efficiently without burning yourself out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I watched this one YouTuber and his name is Jed Cal, and he was a software developer, sort of like me. And after undergrad, he got like a full-time job, and he quit that job to pursue YouTube because his YouTube was doing so good. So he took like maybe 3-4 years off, and he was doing YouTube, and it was like a dream come true, like getting paid to
Yeah.
make videos. But he hit a point where he burnt out from YouTube. Like just wasn't, he wanted it more as that creative side of him rather than his job. So
Yeah.
he ended up interviewing for software developer jobs again, and now he's like working a 9 to 5 type of job all over again, and he says that at this point in life he's a lot more happier.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just hearing these different perspectives on like what is it like to be your own boss and have your own company and your own thing going versus, having this blocked out type of 9 to 5 job. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. And I guess you don't really know until you try it.
Yeah, that's true. I think about that a lot too because, it was weird for me to get to the point where like I have to draw a line with work and understanding that concept of like, your personal life and what you enjoy doing in your personal life versus like your work hours and whatnot. Cause like I remember when I first started, I still do, I'm not gonna lie. I be checking my emails like there's no tomorrow. Like I'm some sort of important person, but like I'm some sort of important person. But that is an interesting take though, because I feel like it obviously we live in a world where that is a possibility as a job. But then also there's jobs too where it is kind of like an actual job, like a doctor where, you're spending a lot of hours. And I think about that a lot because like, well, I'm getting so used to this like 9 to 5. There are jobs like a doctor where, which is my goal, where like at that point I'm not gonna be able to kind of draw that line as much or it's gonna be harder to do so, obviously, because you're a doctor or a resident. Residents are working around the clock. They're getting paid good, but like they're also getting paid like I think it was like little closer to minimum wage because they work so many hours in the day. So like, it's that's the part that also worries me is like I'm gonna get to the point where I'm so comfortable with like drawing the line that like it's gonna be hard for me to be able to expand that to the point where like I'm kind of back to where I was like as a student where like I'm spending my time out of school doing this and that. And yeah, I think it's very much trying to figure out where to use my brain power at because my brain be working overtime sometimes.
Yeah, I think that brings up the point too. Like you should be kind to yourself. Like it's so easy to overwork yourself, but it's so hard to stop. So I think like being able to, like you said, draw that line and set boundaries is huge. Because I was like you for the first, month, like constantly checking my email, checking out my teams. And like I was telling you the other day, I'm like, it's okay. Like you can step away from your teams. But that's hard. And I do know that my boss is a really good example of this, but he actually like takes that time to step away from his laptop and it encourages me. So I think if you are that person to, inspire other people to do that, like it makes work so much easier. If your boss is like, hey, I'm going to go take a bike ride around the park. Like, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should go walk outside. You know what I mean? Like it makes it okay.
Yeah. Like the work
we've
culture.
We've normalized overworking ourselves. So it's like, can we normalize in the other direction?
Yeah. No, that's true. That is true. And I feel like, the work culture and like how that is put across and whatnot, because there are times where like, people are crossing paths and they're like, Nevaeh, you look really stressed. And I'm like, I am. And they're like,
oh my God.
They're like, go take a walk. And I'm like, okay. And, and they're like, I'll walk with you or something like that. Like, that's always nice to be able to like have that encouragement, especially being, again, a young professional where these things are not necessarily told to you. You know what I mean? Like in college or high school and whatnot. Like, I mean, I guess high school is a good way, but even then, like, if you're wanting to go to college, you're spending literally like hours until the nighttime doing extracurricular activities to get yourself into college. Then you're going to college where they tell you should be studying 2 hours per credit. So if you're taking, 12 credits, you're spending 24 hours a week studying. And, like it's always kind of just been that culture of like, when you have extra time, that's not good. You should be doing something with that extra time. But so we'll get there. We'll get there. And I think that's the big reason why I chose to do a gap year and take this time to like get experience with research and make myself a better candidate for medical school, but also just to kind of find myself as a professional,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's always important, no matter what job. And props to people that had jobs in high school and kind of learned that early on,
Yeah.
in their years, because I myself did not work in high school. So like
Yeah.
I think that's why I might be struggling a little bit more than someone who had a job in high school or a job really young.
Yeah. No, same here. Um, but no, yeah, I think the important like message too is like just keep pushing. And I think questioning, it's not bad to question things because that means that you're reflecting and that means that you're truly like putting yourself first.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, even if you are thinking that like I hate this job, like ask yourself why. Like what is it
Mm-hmm.
that you're missing? Like what part of this job do you hate? Because maybe you could do something that will fix that one piece that you hate that is ruining everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to question where you're at and what you want to do and what you don't want to do because eventually, hopefully you find you're calling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing that I always say too, it's funny because like somehow I became an IT engineer and I'm really fucking good at engineering, but like this isn't what I want to ultimately do for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
um that's like a big thing is like I try to not get too comfortable in this even though I'm really good at it because I know that I could stay in this forever if I really wanted to, but I have other goals and things that I want to achieve. So this is just a building block in whatever my story is building for me and wherever I will end up in the future once I figure it out, if I figure it out.
Yeah.
Always growing.
Always growing. No, yeah, I feel I resonate with that because that's exactly what I have to remind myself, especially in these moments where I'm frustrated or feel like I'm not like cut out to do this kind of work. And it's like, okay, I wasn't like that. This is not what I am cut out to do. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it isn't something that I like, I care about it enough to where like
Yeah.
I want to reflect and I want to do better and I want to understand that,
Mm-hmm.
why is it this way, or like how can I make it better, or why am I feeling this way, or how can I even contribute that and take that information into my future, or I think
Yeah.
whatever feelings you're feeling, if you're feeling any feelings when you're working, that just means you care about your job, or you care about
Yeah.
yourself as a professional. Like if you're getting
Mm-hmm.
to the point where you don't question yourself or feel these emotions, then maybe you might want to look into other things, low-key.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that just says that, work does not define who you are. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
you choose your path and like you learn from everything. So even if you have a job now and you hate it, like that'll be a learning block for you as you move forward. And so I don't think a fail at work or a horrible job is ever really a big fail. It's just something that you're learning from and something that you'll move on.
Yeah. And I think like society too has a lot to contribute it to this idea of work. Like I think I seen something or read something, heard something, whatever, that, burnout is being felt at a very young age compared to it was like a couple years ago. And
Hmm.
obviously again, finance has a lot to do with that, or just the hardships of living in at least America, that it makes it almost impossible to feel comfortable in a job or not feel like you want more. And
Yeah.
because it is kind of set up that way to where you feel like you might not be getting paid enough, or you feel like you're
Hmm.
not, what the work you're doing is not enough, and ultimately like that's not a reflection of yourself as an individual. It very much is a reflection of the society right now. So I think also
Yeah.
just kind of considering the factors that you can't really control, and not letting that kind of hinder what you think, or where you think you are as a professional. So yeah, because I
Yeah.
think I'm still trying to figure that out as well. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
like that's okay. You're in your 20s. You'll be fine. Like,
Yeah.
but it's hard not to think about it,
Yeah. No, one of my coworkers who's probably at least like 10, 15 years older than me, he said something today that kind of made me think that, again, like we're always going to face these types of questions in our life. And he was saying that he knows that there's not a lot of because he's kind of like at already the highest position you can get, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
senior level. It's like, where do you go from there? And he was like, I know there's not a lot of like opportunity for me to actually grow in my position. And he was like, and I was down on it for a couple of days again because we had this whole bonus season and stuff like that. But he was like, but I changed my mentality, and I'm just thinking, you know, like what I'm doing here will help me in my future regardless. And I
Yeah.
think it's like taking it away from your company, your job specifically, and more using that experience as you're growing yourself. Like you're not growing yourself for your job. I mean, you could, but it's also you growing yourself for
Yeah.
whatever your next mission is going to be or where you want to go. So
Yeah.
it's a never ending battle,
It
and
really
I'm
is
here
now.
for it.
Yeah. I think too that is just like always a message to yourself that, you know, growth is always is inevitable. Like
Yep.
you can always find room to grow, you can always find room to learn. And even while you might be in a senior position, that I think I also seen something somewhere else. I don't know, maybe it was you who said this, but like it was talking about like when you like your job does not like when you get to the highest point you feel like you're not growing in your job, that doesn't mean you're done growing as a professional. Like it's okay to leave your job, and it's okay
Mm-hmm.
to look for other opportunities where, you know, you learn something else. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that, you know, that sometimes it's always seen that like, okay, you got to stay in the position, but you know, there's always going to be another person following you, there's always going to be another
Mm-hmm.
person wanting to look for the same, like, you know,
Yeah.
opportunities as what you're in. Like, you know, if you walk out that door, there's going to be another person opening that door, you know. So
Yeah.
I think that that's always something to understand, is that like there's so many opportunities. And even nowadays, like, well, you know, there is some downsides to society, there's also some upsides to the point where like there are new jobs, there are new
Mm-hmm.
opportunities, and there's really a lot of things that you can do.
Yeah, you can create your own job with
You can
entrepreneurship.
create your own, exactly. And I think that's something also too that I try to keep in mind. And I yeah, you're right, the podcast has been something that has been a good way to kind of express a different part of myself as well. So, you know,
Yeah.
even if it's like a side job, like I've heard people that just have side jobs just for the heck of it, and they're like, you know, in the daytime they're you know, a nurse or something, and on the weekends they're a florist or something, making floral arrangements. And
Yeah.
so, you know, it
Yeah.
can really be anything that you want it to be.
Yeah. So if you want to be a florist, be that florist.
I actually, there was a point where I did look into being a florist because I was like, oh, that
Oh
sounds
my
kind of
god.
fun. You
Oh
know,
my
creative
gosh.
outlet.
Yeah. I mean, you still could.
I still could.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm interested, you know, you guys share what you guys do to address burnout, you know, how are you guys getting through these tough times at work? What are your thoughts? Let us know.
What you do for
Um,
work, I always find that interesting too, what people do for
yeah.
work. Yeah.
I love to ask people what they do for work. Yeah, and what are some of those troubles that you guys face in your industry or your position, or are you a solo worker? Do you work for a company? Do you work in
What are your work
retail?
goals?
Yeah. Oh my god. Okay.
No, I think that's a good
um,
one. We need a little
I,
inspiration.
true.
My review's coming up here in the next couple of weeks.
Oh my gosh. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to today's episode. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the video, and let us know your thoughts. I'm genuinely interested in what you guys think of these topics that we talk about. And yeah, make sure you guys are following us on Instagram and TikTok. And if you prefer to listen to podcasts with audio only, we are available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Music. So,
Bye,
bye.
guys.